The big lie is already tainting the 2022 and 2024 election, but relentless efforts by the former squatter Donald Trump and his sycophants in politics and the media have convinced millions of voters and the millions of Americans that Joe Biden is a fraudulent president who seized power in a stolen election, which neither is true. Joe Biden rightfully won, and he did not steal power, and he was not installed. This deep-seated suspicion of last November's vote, which threatens to corrode the foundation of the U.S. democracy, mirrors the message that was adopted by the ex-squatter months before he clearly lost a free and a fair election to Biden. It has immediate political implications. The lie that the last election was fixed is already shaping the terrain in which candidates, especially Republicans, are running running in the midterm elections in 2022. And the widespread belief that Trump was cheated out of power is building the former squatter a 2024 platform. He was not cheated out of power. He just lost because he was not popular. Basically, so he's trying to mount a GOP presidential primary bid if he wishes. Long term, the fact that tens of millions of Americans were seduced by Trump's lies about election fraud poses grave questions about the future of Americans' democratic political architecture itself. Now, ultimately, if a large minority of the population no longer has faith in rule by the people, for the people, how long can that system fucking survive? And if the will of millions of people, and if the will of millions of people is no longer expressed through voting, what other outlets are there? Already, the January 6th insurrection has shown what happens when aggrieved groups, in this case, incited by massive lie, take matters into their own fucking hands. Trump's supposed success in creating his own version of a new truth about the election that has still magnetic talent for spinning lies into which his sycophants can buy is revealed in a new CNN poll that was released out on Wednesday. The survey finds that 36% of Americans don't think that Biden legitimately got sufficient enough votes to win last November, but in reality he did. On the other hand, that means a handy majority does believe that Biden won fair and square. But on the other, however, a restive one-third minority in a nation of 330 million Americans can be a powerful and destructive force. Among the Republicans, 78% believe that Biden did not win the election, which in reality he did, and 54% believe that there is solid evidence to support such a view. No, there isn't. According to the poll, even though no evidence exists in multiple courts and states, and the U.S. Congress certified a victory that Trump's Justice Department said was untainted by significant fraud. Among Republicans who say that Trump should be the leader of the party, which he really isn't, 88% believe that Biden lost the election, which in reality he did not. And in a sign that many Americans think that the ex-squatter's efforts are causing more permanent damage, 51% say that it is likely that elected officials in the U.S. will successfully overturn the results of a future election because their party did not win. Paradoxically, the Republicans are more likely to say that democracy is under attack than Democrats. That is despite the fact that any fair reading of the last few years shows that Trump has repeatedly battered the pillars of the democratic political system. The twice impeached ex-squatter abused his power every day, and he politicized the Justice Department and sided with tyrants rather than leaders. When it was the will of the people that he be ejected from office, he tried to stay and came close to staging a coup and trashed the election that ended his squattancy. But such is the power of Trump and the conservative media and propaganda machine that created an alternative reality for his sycophants, that the squatter is able to reinvent the truth in plain sight and get away with it, and the former squatter effectively writes that script. I am not the one trying to undermine American democracy. Yeah, you were. He claimed he was trying to save it. No, you were trying to destroy it. And he says, please remember that. Trump said at a Klan rally in Arizona back in June that itself highlighted the sham audit orchestrated by Republicans of 2020 election votes and the crucial Maricopa County that helped Biden win the state. Most Americans don't spend much time pondering democracy and constitutional guardrails, a subject that has become an obsession for Beltway media and lawmakers in the Trump era. The cost of healthcare, the pandemic, kids trying to get back to school, expiring unemployment benefits and eviction moratoriums, and the homelessness crisis highlighted by the California recall election are more likely to concern most people. But ultimately, such problems are harder to solve if the faith of the people in their political system fails. The daily erosion of democratic standards, thanks to Trump's lies and the actions of his Republican enablers on Capitol Hill, can reach critical mass over time. The experiences of other nations and Eastern Europe, for instance, that have seen democracy tarnished as that incremental damage adds up and it becomes obvious only at a point when it is impossible to reverse. California Governor Gavin Newsom, who's fresh off his defeat to the recall effort, um, basically the recall effort that critics saw as the epitome of an undemocratic exercise. It basically reflected on how political freedoms need to be protected from the likes of Trump, who said that the California election was rigged before the returns had even come in at all. The Democratic governor reached for a message that might be the building blocks of a broader attempt by his party to push back against the extremism of some Republicans. Democracy is not a fucking football. You don't throw it around, Newsom said Tuesday night. It's more like a, I don't know, antique vase. You can drop it and smash it in a million different pieces. Trump is poised to reap the fruits of his own anti-democratic campaign. His lock on the party grassroots appears to give him a prohibitive advantage in the next presidential primary campaign if he decides to run at all. It's easy to imagine a squatterable debate when Trump forces rivals to buy into his own false conceit that the 2020 election was stolen from him when, like I said before, it wasn't. But there was no political incentive for any GOP rising star to get on the wrong side of Trump. Some like the third ranking Republican in the House, Representative Elise Stefanik of New York, have already made the choice between the truth and their own skyrocketing careers, which can prosper in Trump's shadow. The Republicans, however, who have challenged the ex-squatter and pointed out the reality of his authoritarian impulses, however, like the ex-senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, or Wyoming's Representative Liz Cheney, William Stefanik ousted as a conference chair, and find that their political prospects darken. The next presidential election is 3 years away, and the political winds can change at any given point. And it's possible that the GOP voters will tire of Trump's antics and seek a fresh face. Perhaps Trump's increasingly extreme position on election fraud would be counterproductive in a national election and create more momentum against him than it currently gives him in his own party. The anti-Trump Republicans, like Representative Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, believed it happened already. I don't know the answer besides come out and keep saying, ladies and gentlemen, you know Donald Trump lost not because the election was stolen, because it wasn't, but because he ran an election focused on firing up only the most extreme element of the Republican Party, and he turned off swing voters that typically used to vote Republican, Kinzinger said on CNN's New Day on Thursday. Now, CNN's not something I ever watch anyway because I don't have cable. But there can be little doubt that the former squatter's assault on democracy are helping to keep him politically relevant in his capacity to create a false narrative in which he won as a tangible sign of his power. Before the next presidential election, the impact of the big lie is already being felt in the run-up to the congressional and gubernatorial elections next year. Many of those races will be fought under conditions set by new voting laws that are passed by conservative legislators that often discriminate against minority voters, and they are inspired by Trump's big lie. If the California midterms warning that any Democratic victories, especially where mail-in voting is heavily used, will be fraudulent, even though Republicans are predicting to do well, hopefully not. The former squatter has also worked hard, using the carrots of his valuable endorsement to ensure that the GOP candidates up and down the midterm ballot buy into his new face-saving and untrue narrative that he won the last election, which in reality he lost. He has, for instance, endorsed Alabama's Representative Mo Brooks, who was running for Senate and was a speaker at the infamous January 6th Klan rally in Washington that incited the U.S. Capitol insurrection. And then last week, the former squatter endorsed Michigan State Representative Steve Carell, who was a mounting primary challenge to Representative Fred Upton, one of the 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach Trump over the attack on Congress earlier this year. And another, many of his endorsements countrywide, Trump this week backed Christiana Caramo, who's a Republican running for Secretary of State in the Wolverine State, praising her as strong on crime. If you're a Trump supporter, you're not strong on crime. Including the massive crime of election fraud, it was a move that underscored how, alongside the ideological gulfs between the Republicans and the Democrats, but there is a new divide between a political hopeful who support democracy and those prepared to deny it. It is a new dimension in American politics that has shocked many people who have been involved in it for years, and it is drawing grim historical analogies. I think about this. I think about all those democracies that were lost in the middle part and the early part of the 20th century where democracy was not adequately defended and authoritarian regimes rose. The former Obama administration Attorney General Eric Holder said on CNN's Wolf Blitzer on the Situation Room on Tuesday. And it wasn't because democracy was unpopular. You know democracy is very strong. But the reality is the defense of democracy was weak, and we cannot allow that to happen in this fucking country. So if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RVW King, and also hit the notification bell so that you can be notified when the new video comes out, and thanks for listening.